So first of all, thank you everybody so much for attending today's session. We're going to be talking about really what I call the CMS implementation checklist. It's really just 4 key considerations to make before going live with a calibration management solution. You'll see there's probably going to be more than 4 definitely in here. I kind of broke it out into 4 core buckets, which we'll get into in a second. But yeah, again, really appreciate everybody's attendance today. I'm really glad to see a lot of repeat names attending these webinars as we continue to have them. So really, it means a lot. So this is going to be about 20 minutes of presentation. I tried to time it, spot on with that. We'll get started with that. I'll be speaking. My co-host will be speaking. Then we'll get into the questions and answers, the Q&A section. So if you haven't been on one of these webinars before, really simple to ask your questions either on the top or the bottom. There's going to be a Q&A section. We ask that you use that. That way it'll come in. We'll be able to view the questions and answer those live as we go, and then I'll be able to post them for others to see. So, and if there is just in the off chance, it rarely happens anymore, but we run out of time and we aren't able to answer your question, or for whatever other reason, we don't get to it, or we don't have the information to answer that, we definitely will, as we always do, follow up with a personal email afterwards. And then we'll just include the list of those questions with the recording just to make sure that everybody, full transparency and everybody has everything. So with that, I think it's time to go ahead and get started. So before we even get set up here, got to make sure it scrolls properly, but we're just going to introduce myself and my co-host. So for those of you who don't know me, I'm sure many of you do, as I am looking at the attendee list. My name is Robert Goss. I'm a senior account manager here at Prime Technologies. I've been with the company for over 7 years now. It's actually kind of crazy to think about that, how much time has been flying. But over that time, I've worked with tons and tons of different companies, both large and small, established and brand new, greenfield, brownfield, all just in the process world, the service world, anything really to have to do with calibration, measurement, testing, anything like that too. So I'm really, really excited to take some of the knowledge that myself and my co-host have learned over the years and provide that to you guys today. And with that, Rob, once you unmute, please go ahead and introduce yourself.
Hi there. My name's Rob Efford. I've been with the company almost 19 years now. Been with them for quite a long time. I've been involved in hundreds of implementations with all kind of products and customers. So I'm one of the SMEs for the ProCal V5, and I'm here to assist Robert today and moving on.
Yeah, just a comment on that. When I found out this is going to be the content of today's meeting, this is what we were going to be talking about, I just immediately had to get Rob on here. He's, seen it all, whether it's been, FDA, nuclear, standards, just, mechanical stuff. So I'm really happy to have him today. And he's, he has the information that you guys are probably looking for. So just kind of, laying it all out with the agenda, what we're going to be covering today. First of all, I tried to break this into 4 core buckets that we're going to be using to define the underlying things that are, I think, are very important for an implementation. And then at the end, I have an area of just some things that didn't fit into any of those buckets that Rob will be able to talk a little bit on. And then after that, we'll dive right into the Q&A. So first of all, we're going to be talking about preparation, really the planning, logistics. These are really the things that you need to know well in advance. These are the core, key pieces to help build a foundation that can be grown and expanded upon. After that, we're going to be talking a little bit about the, developing a record creation plan and strategy. This is really just around database population, getting both your assets, your workflows, your configuration, all that information populated and set up within the system. This is its own section because whenever we're doing an implementation or, we're reviewing requirements, this is always just, one of the biggest points of uncertainty. It can be one of the larger, hurdles to, climb over during an implementation. So I wanted to dedicate an entire section to that. Afterwards, we'll talk a little bit about ensuring that your stakeholder requirements are going to be met by the proposed solution. Anything that isn't really functionality based or anything that you don't necessarily think of right away, we'll be sure to cover that. It's really the other people outside of your core team and how they'll interact with the software. Then we'll get into taking into consideration all the present and future functionality needs. So it's not just functionality. This is more going to be focused about looking ahead, understanding where you are today, understanding where you may be tomorrow, and making sure that you're accounting for all of that. Afterwards, we'll get into those questions I mentioned, these additional things that didn't fit into these other buckets, and then the Q&A. So as we're going through this, again, please don't hesitate to just use that Q&A. They'll be logged in a list. We'll be able to view those, go through them, respond via text, or respond in the end during the Q&A section. So that's probably one of my favorite parts of this, is getting into your guys' questions, whether they're about the content we're talking about today, or just, we always get all those other random questions about the software and everything too. So anything you guys may need, just write in that Q&A section and we'll get to it. So really, kicking this off, what is the thesis of what we're going to be talking about? What is the core message? And I think ultimately that is what you see on your screen here. It's how can you best be ready to take on an implementation? So what does that mean? That's really just going to be, what are the steps you can take well in advance to ensure you're ready and that you can get this done as timely as possible with, as little, bandwidth that you may have, anything like that. What are the core things that the steps you want to take to ensure success? And the first one, it really goes without saying, but it just always comes back to me as one of those things that everyone, knows that they should be doing, but it's not always on the top of their mind when it should be. And that's setting a go live date. Now, this could be, February 1st, 2023. I need to have it ready and live in production on that day. That could be summer of next year or Q2 or something like that. But this really is going to be important because this helps you set something where you can start making goals and you can work backwards from that point, whether it is a hard date or whether it is just something more ambiguous. Having an idea of when you need the system to be in production is going to be extremely important in working backwards to ensure that you're hitting all those steps. And then you can really build out the implementation plan once you understand what that is. You understand how much time you have for each section, and it's just extremely vital. So had to be on the top of my list. Next up is how is the software going to be installed? What's your infrastructure going to look like, and how can you get that prepared? So this is going to be really, are you moving forward with a cloud-based or a web-based solution, similar to like ProCal Direct or our new application PCX? Are you looking for more of a locally installed application on your server, or whether it be physical or a virtual server, and you need something more like the ProCal V5 on-premise solution? Not only do you want to know this well in advance, these are some of the things where you don't want to decide you're going with an on-prem solution. We send you the software, you're ready to start the implementation, and you realize, oh, I don't have a server to put this on. Just one of those things that, it again goes without saying, but you'd be surprised the amount of people that don't take this into consideration until we bring it up to them. Afterwards, it's, again, pretty simple, but very helpful to have this figured out early on. It's defining and delineating the users' roles and responsibilities within the system. So this is everything from who are going to be the approvers, who are going to be the administrators, who might need, read-only access. Understanding what first of all, those different roles or groups or permission levels are going to be is helpful. And then you can kind of fit the technicians or management into those roles once they've been constructed. And then we can set up the system with specific workflows to meet the needs of the roles you have selected there. Afterwards, how involved are you going to want the vendor to be? This is really up to the customer. This is up to you. You're going to know this better than anybody else, but how much bandwidth do you have? How much experience do you have with computerized systems? What's your availability or your confidence in getting this done? We have some customers, who will go in, they'll purchase the system, say thanks, and have, just a completely successful implementation because they put the time and the attention to detail into getting it set up right without even having to get in touch with us. Then we also have customers sometimes where they don't have the bandwidth. This is important. They need it maybe to meet a regulatory need, but they don't have the time or expertise to get the system installed and up and running by that go live date. And that's when they'll lean a little bit more into leveraging the vendor's assistance. Whether it's us and our application, some other calibration management solution, or really any software solution, the vendor is going to have the documentation, the expertise, and the know-how to get you from kickoff to go live as quickly as possible. So whether it's just basic consultation or actual services or a full implementation package, that's just one of those things you want to be prepared to answer so that you can plan around that. Last thing, I just wanted to tag this on at the end because it's something a little more personal that I've been running into recently, is our integration is going to be required. Again, it's a good question to understand this up front because this is going to help you determine what the workflow is going to look like. I've worked with several customers where they'll go in, they'll They don't really realize that they're going to need to have some sort of integration, maybe with an ERP or a LIMS system or another reporting tool. And we start building workflows only to find out, oh, wait, we have another tool this needs to be integrated with. And we have to kind of take it back and rework on those workflows to meet those needs. So it's just something great to understand because it's going to make sure that you're prepared and you're adaptable moving forward. So kind of moving on a little bit more into the next bucket that I have here, tackling record creation and population. Again, like I said earlier, I made this its own section because it tends to be the biggest point of reservation that we see customers. It can be a really big deal, we'll get into some of the reasons why in a second, but this is just, I see a lot of people, confused about this. They don't fully understand what this is, the best practices for this, and it can be just daunting. So I wanted to kind of take it back and realize we do these all the time. I see this, any level of whether it's, okay, I only have 50 pressure transmitters that I'm going to be able to type in manually, or I'm migrating 30 years of history over from the decommissioned, no longer supported calibration management solution from back in the day. Regardless of that approach, there are going to be several avenues that you can take to really simplify this, make it just not take too much time for you and it just take a lot of that worry off of your back. So the first thing is you need to understand what needs to be managed within the system. And that's just ensuring, we have customers who will want to take everything, all the equipment records, all the decommissioned instruments, all that other stuff and pull it into the system, which is really good, but they don't always need that. And so that's really just, this is about understanding what you want to manage within the system, what's going to need what you need in there, and only really focusing around that. So it's just, again, it helps you reduce bloat and it kind of helps you, be much more efficient with the database population. Next, and this is probably one of the most important questions to ask, and not everybody knows it, surprisingly, but it's how does that data exist today? It's the data that you need to populate in your system. You don't even know what it happens, but you don't even know what instruments you have. You're out there and you calibrate things when they break and you need to, figure that out. So that can be a situation where we may do manual walks or lines and we'll handle it in a specific way versus you have the information on paper and we need to copy it in with a data entry specialist or some other manner. If you have it in Microsoft Excel, even greater, there's import tools for that. Or, it's in some sort of legacy, we call it like a soft format, some other database that'll be pulled in. But understanding how the data exists today is going to be important in figuring out, again, what the next steps are going to be. After that, it's really the manner or process of populating the database. Is it going to be manual entry where you create a few templates and copy those over? If you're using a Fluke 754, you're just going to populate your system by downloading completed ad hoc calibrations into the system to create those asset records with the results that way. Or if you have the information in Microsoft Excel, for example, we have here at Prime Technologies a data load utility where you can take all of your instruments, your cal specs, your equipment, test instruments, and all of that and populate it in our Excel spreadsheet template and then mass import all those instruments and assets in at the same time. Or really at the other extreme end is a data migration. This is if you have the system in an old database and you're switching over to a newer calibration management solution. Are you going to want to just start over, or do you want to take all that information and all that historical data, all the the audit records and audit trail and everything from your previous system and pull all of that in? The way this could really look is that you turn the one system off, you turn on ProCal, and then everything's immediately there. It's just like, the interface changed, but the data is all the same. So those options are all available. It just really determines what makes the most sense based on what you need in there, how quickly you need it in there, and the current state of the existing data. Once the data is ready to go and set in there, again, you're probably going to want to verify or audit the data. This can be, if you're working in like an FDA or pharmaceutical world, you may need to do a very detailed, validation of that information where maybe you're taking a net sample and doing a direct comparison versus maybe, in a much like, another area, you could be doing a direct comparison, or you're just going through and making sure that your workflows are working and everything looks the same and it looks like it's there. This is going to be, again, up to the customer, your regulatory requirements and your specific needs and wants, but it's always good to plan on how you're going to verify that the data was pulled into the system correctly and everything's functioning the way you expect it to. Afterwards, I just tagged that, put this on to the end because I think it's important. It's something people don't always think about, but you want to be prepared as you're doing this. If you're going to be in a situation where you're going to need to add in a bunch of assets in the future, Say you're a service company and you get a new customer and they have 300 pieces of equipment that they need you to start calibrating every year. You don't want to have to go and manually enter that data. Maybe they'll give you a spreadsheet and you can import it in. Or if you're picking up a new site or something like that, and you're going to need to migrate that data in, it's just being prepared with a workflow or an idea of how you're going to be able to pull in mass amounts of instruments in the future, just in case, that opportunity or that occasion ever comes around. There's a lot more that we can get into this. And I believe that our next webinar that we're going to be doing next year is going to be really tailored specifically around data migrations, database population, and all of that good stuff too. So if this is something that's of particular interest to you guys, please keep your eyes out for an upcoming webinar invite sometime later in January. This is huge. This is one of the biggest questions we get, and we want to invest a full webinar into this specific topic for you guys. So moving through, the rest of what we've got here, the next slide I have pulled up here is covering your stakeholder requirements. And this is really focused around things that may not be really relevant or apparent to you, but maybe others in your organization, your customers, your management, quality, information security, anything like that. You want to make sure that all of their needs are going to be met as well by the system, because that could be a problem where hypothetically you decide you're moving forward with a system, and then your IS team comes in and wants to do an audit of there, and then they realize, oh, there's all these security flaws in the system, and then you'll have to go back to step one. This is just one of those things where there are going to be other parties involved in this, unless you own your company and you're working in a one-man shop, which that's really great if you are. But a lot of us and a lot of the attendees I see on the list here are not in that situation, and they're going to be working in kind of a much larger organization that's going to have to account for what others are doing. So the first thing in here, reporting and metrics. This is just, it goes without saying, but this is just, not only are you going to need, certificates in the reporting in the system, you're going to most likely, be taking the information, your summaries of passes and failed, out of tolerance assets over a year, trending, specific other ISO reporting or stuff like that. You're most likely going to need that. So you just want to ensure that the reporting requirements, the metrics, the analyses that you're going to need to pull out of this, maybe for your monthly meeting with management or something like that, it's going to be readily accessible and really easy to get out of the system. Just something else to consider, not just your specific reports and your data output, but what else other people interacting with the system or people not interacting with the system are going to need to get from this. It's really important to take note of that and make sure it's covered early on. Next up, regulatory compliance. I think we all know this. If you deal with it, you really know it, but you just want to be sure that, you're covering all those needs, whether they are FDA, they're ISO, EPA, GDP, any of these other ones. Most of the time you should know about these, but it's always good to check around, especially if you know that you operate in a regulated environment. Ease of internal adoption. This is actually another huge one. I think personally, aside from the migration, the database population, this is probably the second biggest hurdle that we see personally in these implementations. And that's, you're going in, you understand the value, you understand this is great, you're ready to go with the implementation. But then when you get this implemented and you're ready to go live, none of your technicians are able to understand it. None of them want to, make that transition, especially when you go to some of these plants where you have the individuals who have been, working with pen and paper for, 40 years, doing the same thing the same way every single day. It's really difficult to get some people to really move into the electronic or the computerized system sometimes. So not only do you want to ensure that the ease of internal adoption comes from the user interface and, the ease of use of the software, but also through your documented and constructed workflows, making sure that you have tons of training materials, video overviews, training courses from the vendor, or just, really intuitive user workflows to get in there and perform the work that they're going to need. This, again, it's just something to be very, very careful about. And I'm sure if this is something that's going to resonate with you, you'll know it's going to resonate with you. But there's a ton of different steps. And we do have a lot of experience working through this and being able to make suggestions and best practices for helping out with that internal adoption, because that is going to, again, be another big hurdle that a lot of our customers face. Moving on, are read-only users required? This is just, so they're going to be individuals who are not core users to the system, but they still need access to reporting or anything else like that. You want to make sure they have an avenue into your system. And then getting, the last two things I have on here, what other parties need to be involved in the implementation? I kind of brought this one up in the when I described the slide itself, but again, you want to make sure that if you have, security, IS or IT or QA or anyone else that may want, management, anyone else that wants to be involved in the implementation or is going to need to be involved in the implementation for regulatory needs or, internal practices, your just internal company policies, you want to make sure you have those people documented. And most of the time we like to have them involved either in, presentations and discussions before the project kicks off, but definitely at the kickoff date so that we can set those responsibilities, understand those roles, and have a direct line of communication between everyone involved in the implementation, whether it be the vendor like us, your team, or maybe you're using a consultant for part of the implementation as well. You just want to make sure everybody is aware of their responsibility and that open line of communication is there. And then the last thing, again, goes without saying, but budget. You just want to be sure that you're aware of this, what services or implementation costs may be involved with that. This is just, we have seen some things get kind of run away, and you want to understand what your overarching budget is, make sure that that's communicated, and then we can make sure that the entire plan is built around that, because ultimately it's going to be maybe not as important to you, but your higher ups or anybody else in the organization. It's going to be one of the biggest key, factors associated with this. So getting in, the last slide I'll be talking on today is just talking a little bit more about being proactive and not reactive. I think proactivity is just essential for success. It helps you, like I was saying earlier, build that foundation initially so that when things get thrown at you, wrenches come into the mix, other issues, outside forces, you're prepared and you're ready to be adaptable, and that you can, ensure that nothing's going to derail you, both through the implementation itself and through continued usage of the software. So a few of these things that I think are really important to highlight are first of all, are there plans that could require regulatory compliance in the future? Just because you're not regulated by the FDA, or you're not following specific ISO requirements currently, doesn't mean you won't be 6 months from now. And this is something that we see where some sites will come in and they'll say, oh, well, let's just get started, let's just move in with this, and then they'll have to go and maybe they involve an FDA regulated site, or the corporate buys an FDA regulated site and wants it to be added to the system. And then they have to take a step back and make sure that they're actually having a validated specific workflow that's being followed. These are just the types of things you aren't always, and like everything else on the list, you're not always going to be able to foresee these, but having as much foresight as possible is going to help you make sure that you're prepared and ready to act when these types of situations come. Another one right here, and it kind of goes with industry trends as well. Industry trends, it could be regulatory compliance, but it could be other things too. I know that there's a lot more, many more metrology requirements that have been unfolding over the last few years. And from what I'm told, there's going to be many more in the future too. So these are just some of those industry trends where if maybe you're not doing measurement uncertainty calculations on your activities, your calibrations and testing today, but you could be in a few years from now. So you just want to make sure that it's something that your system and your practices are capable of handling. Is there a possibility of growth at your site or organization? This is another big one too, where we'll see, I have a few, core examples of customers. They were looking at us and looking at a few other examples. They went with the cheaper option, just a simple gauge management solution. And 8 months later, all of a sudden, there's a ton of growth at their organization, and the application, the easy to get started application just didn't fly. It didn't meet their requirements, and they had to completely backtrack, start all over. And because of that internal growth, they had to meet new needs and meet new requirements that they weren't initially prepared for, that, thinking about this 8 months prior, they would have been prepared for. So it's just being known, if you guys are quickly growing or there's growth in your team or anything like that, you'll probably know about this in advance. And you just want to make sure that you do have a scalable system that's capable of handling that. Next up on here, what other activities and assets should you be prepared to manage? This is again to, some teams, maybe you're just doing, pressure right now, or you're just doing temperature, and you think that's all that you need. But then again, you may need some additional activities within the system later on. You just want to ensure that it is an adaptable system that can handle pretty much not just what you're doing today, but anything that you could be doing in your current role. And then finally on my list here are there tools within the system to help with other requirements? This is just something else, it helps with buy-in, it helps with, expansion, but we see this frequently where customers will get started with, just this in our program, just the calibration module, but then another team will say, oh, well, we need minor maintenance functionality or checklists, or, oh, we need to start, calibrating pipettes or calibrating scales and balances, or we need parts and inventory management in the system. And those are the types of things where instead of going out and having a very similar system that has maybe a different, it just handles something slightly different, then you're using two completely different systems to meet a very similar goal. It's better to look for solutions. Again, you won't always know this, but if you do have some foresight and the ability to look forward into it, it's great to look at solutions that will meet all of your needs, whether or not they're just, whether it's today's needs or tomorrow's needs throughout your team. So with that, I wanted to just kind of keep this last slide on here. Allow my colleague here, Rob Efford, to talk a little bit more about his experience and some of the other things that he's seen over the years.
Yes, thank you, Robert. So, this slide, additional words of wisdom. So the first bullet point, we have the foundations you build at the beginning have a major impact for the long-term success of the solution. So what we've come to learn is that if you build accurate workflows and you are able to import clean data into the system, you're going to have much more long-term success with that particular value there. Leverage the support of your team and your vendor. Don't try to take on more than you can handle. Delegate to your team and lean on the vendor if it's available. Ourselves, we love to be involved in the customers because we want to make sure that they are successful. Set incremental goals, assign dates, and try to stay on schedule. This is kind of huge, and we've found that most of our customers have a greater success rate if they're using some sort of project plan, and that they have weekly meetings at the very least to make sure that they're staying on schedule and that they can complete things as they go. Stay aware of new functionality that may help satisfy your evolving requirements. And Robert had just touched on some of this stuff here, but one of the things that I wanted to point out was stay in touch with your vendor for new releases or updates. And hopefully they're staying in touch with you and you don't have to reach out to them. But just in case you want to see what's out there, if you don't know about a patch or an update, then you may not be able to benefit from that there. That's me, Rob.
Perfect. Thanks so much, Rob. Great. So kicking it off right before we get into the Q&A here, and I do see we have a few questions coming in, so please continue to answer, ask those. But how do you get started today? And this is just really important. First of all, you can always reach out to us, whether it be, through the chat here, the Q&A, we can reach out to you, following up with a phone call, email, our website, anything like that. We're always ready and available. Even if you're not going to move forward with us, our product, we're more than happy to have these kinds of conversations with you, whether it be with myself or someone else on the team. We're happy to review your user requirements specification and understand what specific needs you may have, make suggestions and recommendations based on your bandwidth and some of the information you may be able to provide to us. So again, I can't stress this enough. We're more than happy to assist. We like to consider ourselves experts in the space, and we're more than happy to, share our knowledge and share our experience with you. Again, even if you're not going to move forward with our application. So don't ever hesitate to reach out for anything like that. Happy to have a quick call, just answer a few questions or provide additional resources or white papers that we may have internally. Cool. So with that, time for the Q&A. So I'm going to launch this up. We do have a few questions. Seeing two I can answer right now, and I'll get one for you in a second, Rob. The first one I have is, will you be sending the deck to us? Yes, we will be sending. You'll have a copy of the presentation, the full recording and everything. Anyone who attended or signs up for this, you'll be getting an email once this is done processing and it's put up on our YouTube page. So you'll have a full copy of everything that we've been discussing today for your review, or so that you can share it with your team. The next one, I'll skip over this one. I'll let you ask this one, Rob. The next one I'm going to answer is, do we have to do an integration before we use the software? And that's a really good question. The answer is no. You certainly do not. And a lot of our customers who do go forward with integrations, they don't always start out with that integration. Sometimes they're not ready for it and they just want to start using the system as quickly as possible to meet needs. Or sometimes they don't even know that they're going to be doing an integration later on. once you can always set the system up, you can always be using it. If there is going to be a change to your workflow, it shouldn't be too difficult to do. Though if you are certain that an integration is coming and you have the time, it tends to save some money, and it tends to, reduce some downtime and reduce, I guess when I say cost, it could be financial, it could be time-based, it could be, brain power or stress from you. But if you are aware of it and you have the opportunity, I think it is probably good to start off and kick the integration out just with the system as well. But that's my own personal opinion. Rob, the next question I will let you answer, but that is, what vendor services do you recommend as the bare minimum for a successful implementation? So I guess this can be open-ended, but really, you have the
experience. So at a bare minimum, one of the things that I always recommend when I start off with an implementation is to have a kickoff meeting with the key players here to find out exactly where the customer wants to go, what workflows have to be fulfilled. Because some customers won't have a functional requirements. They don't even know what they don't know. So I think this kickoff meeting is one of the most important things as a bare minimum. And also, we'd like to make sure that that we're going to successfully get their data into the system, whether it's via us, the vendor, or through themselves, and how can we help them?
Perfect. I always like to say too, a session or two of web training never hurts, because at least, we can, in a single 2-hour session, we can kind of build a strong foundation for your understanding that you can build upon internally too. So I always at least recommend that at the bare minimum. There is another question on here. So it's an anonymous one as well, but do you have an integration matrix or reference for popular cal instruments that have compatibility with ProCal? So we do have an integration matrix. We have both. So we have a core API tool that we call ProCal Connector and Data Exchange. And really, it's a tool that can be used to facilitate the communication between other applications and other drivers, anything like that. To ProCal, we have another one called a query tool, which is more of a direct query against the database. But we have the user manuals. We have the detailed documentation, sample code, and then we also have simple workflow diagrams as well. And then with the cal instruments that have compatibility with ProCal, we do have references and documentation on our website. Or again, you came up anonymous, so if you want to write to me, just send me an email afterwards. I'd be happy to. I'd be more than happy to follow up with you and send that information. And then I do have another person here who is not anonymous. I'm not sure if it's the same person or not, but they asked, please send them the info for the connector. And I'm more than happy to do that. It's going to lay out all the tools. Again, like I said, sample code, how it works, how we can connect to your tools, how we facilitate everything. So won't be a problem at all. And I will take note of your name, and I will make sure that you receive a copy of the information around the integration documentation. Again, anybody else, if you're interested in receiving that, or you have any questions about anything else that we've covered so far, please feel free to reach out to me, or just shoot me a message, and I will take note of your name, and I'll make sure to get it right over to you. Great. So that looks like that was it for the questions. Not sure if any more are coming in. I'm going to hang out for just a minute or so, just to see if that is the case. But with that, and I probably should have had this up the whole time. This is my contact information if you want to reach directly out to me for anything. Rob Efford's contact information, if you want to reach directly out to him, please feel free to shoot us an email. You can always also reach our team at techsupport@primetechpa.com, or call the main number under Rob's phone number here and extension 2, and that'll ring to about 20 different people who will have to go and answer the phone for you and have a conversation. So with that, I'm not seeing any additional questions come in. So if you have them, please reach out to me. But really, just thank you, everybody. And again, these we're seeing a lot of strong growth with these webinars. We're really, really happy with how these are turning out. More and more people attending every single time. So really, first of all, thank you to everybody. If it's your first time here, huge thank you to everybody and all of the repeat people. We do see a handful of your names coming in every time we have one of these, and it means a lot to us. So thank you so much for the support, the attendance, the participation from everybody. Thank you to my co-host, Rob Efford, for his years of knowledge and experience.
Thank you.
Yeah, great. And with that, I hope you guys have a great day.